They had a class at Amherst. So
And to also, you did one for us in Athol.
yeah,
I'll say like 10 years ago.
yeah, been ringing the bell. But sadly, what's starting to happen now, two things that were main game changers. The first one was last year in New York City, on the corner of Broadway, pretty busy street, and Howard, an 8-story building, inspected by a very reputable firm that does buildings and envelope studies. And they were going through their 5-year inspection again, but the norm is they look at paint jobs. Guess what the method of repair was on that fire escape?
Well,
And a woman, architect, was doing her one of her inspections. She dislodged the tread on the 8th floor.
right around the corner.
And I have a video of it, not of it, but a video about the case. Ping pong, ping, and then a guy walking, minding his own business, killed. So now pieces are falling from the sky on these 75 to 125-year-old structures and killing people down below. And just recently in Boston, not 2 months ago, 4 people went out on a fire escape. Right? For what purpose?
That's eight.
Because you guys have showed, every building now is what? Smoke free, vape free, except the smoking room, which is now the fire escape. And so while these 4 kids are out there doing whatever, fire escape.
Is that a 3-ticket ride or so, what is that? Is that a 3-ticket amusement ride or what?
Is that an amusement?
Well, it's starting to happen because, so I'm gonna open up to a couple more questions, right? Is that clock not even connected, right? Time check, just so we know we're all online.
11:31.
So we got, because at 12 o'clock we're having, right?
We'll take a break, yeah.
Yeah, so we got another 30 minutes. So I just want to, any more questions before I start playing a couple of videos? I think we'll play a few videos, and then at the end of the videos, we'll go into a break and then come back afterwards, and we'll get into more nuts and bolts mentality and what you guys need to do. So any more questions to Rusty, to Bolts, to how Rush grows?
I'm curious with the school from 100 years ago, same was built, fire escape, but since then they've added a second interior egress.
No.
Is it because it's there, it needs to be operable, or can they now not have to maintain it and or take it down?
Yeah, use it or lose it is the first rule. So you can't keep up pieces of steel just because they look great. The Hysterical Society says you got to keep this up. If you're going to keep a piece of fire escape up, even though you've met the 2 means of egress inside the building, it needs to be still structurally sound. That's the first thing.
That's in code?
That's in code.
That's enforced.
And what you're talking about is pre-existing non-conforming issues. So you got a lot of 75 to 150-year-old buildings here that the fire escape is still on it, and you are allowed to maintain it as of the date of its installation. So when the bars are 8 inches wide, you get to keep 8 inch wide. When the rail is 36, you get to keep 36. When the staircase is 24, you get to keep it unless there's a change of use. Then it triggers another baby, and that is you might have to take that building that you just turned into a school. 24 is no longer allowed, you have to go to 36. So there's some horse trading that keeps going on. But I got a 100-year-old school or a 100-year-old church or a factory and there's a fire escape on the back, they can maintain that fire escape structurally sound, meaning a structural engineer and a registered architect will tell you there's no internal rust. He's willing to put his life and his signature on it because the insurance company, in all the cases that I've dealt with nationwide, have paid over $100 million so far in the cases that I've been involved in. So you want somebody to come back and say, hey, do me 2 things. Sign your life away on a document that has a questionnaire of some kind, and I'll share the questionnaire. Just industry standard questions. If anybody says, well, is that on the government site? Is that in this? That's just an industry standard questionnaire. And they can copy those questions and put it on their letterhead. Okay? These are just boilerplate questions that ask structural questions and a few code questions. And the code questions just reinforce that there's no need to upgrade it, to 42 inches high, and that the bars have to be 4, because there's a lot of people who are told to fix their fire escapes wrong and take it down and do other things because people believe you're supposed to have a code compliant fire escape today. No, you maintain your fire escape as of the date of its installation. And that goes for sprinkler systems. As long as you don't change it significantly, you are able to maintain things until something else triggers a need for it to have the new code compliant. And fire escapes is one. So this rusty fire escape, we could have fixed it. But that school chose, no, take it down. I got a picture of it before. I got a picture after, but I thought this was a great piece, because very rare can we drag you guys out to a fire escape. So if you can't bring a horse to water,
Can't make them
bring water to the horse. Okay, question?
Well, changes within the building would constitute changes of the fire escape. as
Correct.
well.
Every now and then you will trigger, you guys have a percentage, of whatever you do inside the building,
There's a few triggers.
a few triggers that trigger this, and so now there's horse trading, because it could be a very historical building. They're not gonna allow, but so you can say, can you take an existing fire escape on the back and say, listen, I'm not gonna bust your cannolis on this one, let's do this. Keep your fire escape, let's convert some of these windows to doors. Let's take this fire escape and let's augment it so that at least the staircase is 36 inches wide, 7-11 going down. Let's just fatten it up, and you keep it in the same place, but let's just fatten it up. And let's put it more code compliant. Or you may say, no, you know what, just give me my rails at 42 and I'm gonna be happy. So take all the 36-inch rails away. But who's that? That's the building inspector, maybe in communication with the state to determine what you wanna do. 75% of the time, you're gonna leave it alone. 25% of the time, you're gonna horse trade. Because a lot of times, you have to get as close to the code as you can get for the betterment of the community, right? You wanna keep that building. But sometimes the way that building is laid out, that fire escape is essential for it to stay up. Otherwise, they're just gonna knock it down and put up another, standard building with 2 means of egress inside. Right? And now you have another question that sometimes comes up, and that is some people say, well, I only have 1 means of egress and I have a sprinkler system. The code sometimes allow that. To have 1 means of egress and a sprinkler system, and you're code compliant. But now the insurance company steps in and says, what happens if I don't have any water pressure? So now that guy's insurance rate goes. So there's always something that is causing, but the key is, these things are bulletproof. You get another 25 to 50 years out of these. A lot of times, 95, 98% of the time, we do not replace these. The steel is great, the connection is great. You might have some deteriorated metal, and it's usually where connections meet. That's a clip, that's an angle, but some of these steel majority of it is all 1/4 inch thick. And a lot of times, this will never rust. This will never rust. You know where it rusts? In this corner where the pigeons seem to poo all the time. So as long as you can accumulate leaves, pigeon poo, cigarette butts, stays moist and wet, what happens? Leaves, that's what sits there and corrodes this thing. You give it water and air, it'll corrode all day long. But you got a lot of fire escapes, we don't replace them. Don't even ask what it costs to replace a fire escape. Everyone's like, oh, I can replace this fire escape for 15 grand. No! 75 grand, 125 grand. So can you refurbish it? Sure you can. Plenty of metal here. Can you upgrade voluntarily some of the things? Sure, horse trade with the guy. Bring your rails up to, because I can keep my 36-inch rails and add up another 6 inches up here. Guess what I got? Code compliant rails. Oh, but your bars are 6 instead, or 8. I'll mesh it. Now what? Compliant? So that's the main thing. So let's take a look at some videos to scare you guys about what's happening. Then as soon as we finish eating, we'll come back, we'll talk some more. But the key is get it on a checklist, right? As soon as you get it on a checklist that says you're gonna pull a permit, what do you need to have? You need to have 2 means of egress. So I don't care what permit you're pulling, right? So at the beginning of anybody, I'm changing a light bulb in my house, great, I need a certificate, you know, give me the money, fill out the application, and you're gonna be repairing or restoring the roof on your house, whatever, what do I need? I need 2 means of egress. Are your egresses internal or external? Oh, I have one of each. Great, before you can start, give me my certificate. That guarantees whose life? The workers, right? And the tenants, because if there's gonna be a fire, it usually happens during construction. Because somebody's right. So let me play a couple videos. First of all, I'm going to get back to the load testing question. So after this, we're going to talk about load testing. If you've never seen a load test, we've documented in videotape load testing. Men drag around 50-pound sandbags. I want to show you how ridiculous that is, and it's how to throw money away as opposed to use that money for refurbishing.
That looks like a pretty good road test right there.
Yeah, well, I want to get back to it. Let me show you the videos, but I'll talk about load testing and how safe these things are. So that way you guys can understand that when they were originally built and that they're properly refurbished, you will, if there's a tag on it. And is your colors green, yellow, red for the fire code? White, yellow, green. I mean, white, yellow, and red.
You really don't have.
No tagging?
I was looking in here, you actually had what he was talking about. This has got green in it. So,
Well, who was mentioning it? Was you. Are you mentioning that the whole color is?
That's how our tags are for whenever we do a disaster reevaluation.
tagging the entire building as.
So I'd love to get some, I'll get you cards and I'll get some information, and if the whole tag has to go, we really don't care what color the tag is.
I mean, 'cause right
But it
now
has to
it's
be,
not-
if Mass is green and California's green and Texas is green, it's gonna go green. I just wanna see what,
That's a national system, actually.
perfect. I mean, we're always,
talking about different things completely. It's just the color coding pattern would be the same.
As far as the fire service, we have the white background with the red X or / depending on the contrast
Right.
pattern. Yeah.
That's if the building is unsafe. or not.
so does anybody remember about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, in the Berkeley School of Music area, Boylston and Berkeley, 4 students fell? Anybody remember that story? Beginning of August? Let's see if you guys remember the story. No.
You guys see that okay, or want to fill the lines as it's
Yeah, I'm gonna leave. Is that better?
When they fell all the way to the ground, and city records show that the building's owner hasn't filed a required safety inspection certificate since the late 1980s.
We asked a fire escape expert to take a look, and he says this could be just the tip of the iceberg. It was just before midnight Sunday. Some of the gratings on this fire escape on the back of 47 Hemingway Street gave way. Several people were on it. 2 of them were hurt when they crashed to the ground.
I see that there's a missing bracket, a single bracket that used to be tied into the rail, and it gave way, and I believe that's why pieces of the grating fell.
Cisco Meneses is the founder of the National Fire Escape Association. We asked him to look at the aftermath of the collapse. You can see where the bracket he's talking about used to be, and you can see the spot on the wall where it once was attached. He blames rust caused by a lack of maintenance.
The rust is what eats the steel, and I believe, based on what I can see right now, she rotted right at the building.
Why wasn't that caught? There is no evidence the fire escape was inspected and safety certified.
Right now, a lot of these fire escapes, if they're not being properly inspected and repaired, what happens is we have collapses like this.
Building owners in Boston are required to have their fire escapes certified every 5 years and file that certificate with the city. But when we searched the database for Boston's Inspectional Services Department, we found no certificates on file, at least since the late 1980s. A violation a building inspector has now cited the owner for The inspector's report orders the owner to, quoting now, provide a fire escape and fire balcony affidavit forthwith.
There's more here on this other side that I can show you.
Just a short walk down the alleyway, Manassas found this fire escape with holes in the brick where support brackets are anchored.
There's 3, 4 supports not even tied into the building anymore. There's gaping holes this big.
He says it's not uncommon for owners to skip inspections or for private inspectors to gloss over problems.
Because a lot of people, they collect the fee, $200, $300 for a piece of paper. Nobody's checking, and so what happens is, these are landmines ready to explode.
We tried to contact the owner of the building where this fire escape collapsed to see if he wanted to comment, but 2 voicemails and an email have gone unanswered. It sounds like this problem is a bit more widespread than we would all like to think.
You'll keep talking about it. Well, we have much more still ahead.
News at 6. Start.
So who's responsible for that? The owner of the building or the inspectional services?
The owner.
The owner of the building, it's not our job to do that.
Okay.
Right.
If you talk to attorneys though,
You know,
if you took it into court, it would be spread and smeared all over the place.
Yeah.
Everybody would get a fair share, but it's always the owner.
Are crucial, of course, to survival in so many buildings here.
After the recent fire escape collapse that killed a man in Soho weeks ago, our investigative reporter Jim Hoffer went out to take a closer look at fire escapes, found that many are rusting, warped, or have missing pieces. Not a good scenario if you use one of them. Jim's here now with his exclusive report. Jim?
We learned that in the wake of that fatal accident, 3 additional fire escape steps were found to be loose, even though the 7-story structure was deemed safe in its last inspection. At least it had been inspected, even if not thorough.
Excuse me, well, I have to just reload for a
8
second.
additional fire escape steps.
This is not a good scenario if you use one of them. Jim's here now with his exclusive report. Jim?
We learned that in the wake of that fatal accident, 3 additional fire escape steps were found to be loose, even though the 7-story structure was deemed safe in its last inspection. At least it had been inspected, even if not thoroughly. Thousands upon thousands of fire escapes 6 stories or less are rarely ever inspected. When a step fell 7 stories from a fire escape on this Howard Street building, it fatally fractured the skull of a man walking by. It also exposed the city's weak oversight of these steel structures hanging over the heads of New Yorkers everywhere.
You see a bolt missing. Should that have passed? There's a bolt missing on that connection. This is the actual fire escape.
Inspector and founder of the National Fire Escape Association, Cisco Manassas, says the Howard Street fire escape should have never passed inspection in its last check in 2013, when a private engineer found the structure safe with maintenance repairs required, in this case painting, which the safety expert says mask the corrosion.
That's all scrape and paint, so there's very few structural work really done and proper inspections being done on these New York fire escapes.
These fire escape inspections are only required of a building owner every 5 years as part of the city's mandatory facade inspection law, which applies to buildings 6 stories or higher. Our investigation has found that
Think about
below
6 stories or higher.
no
Anything
fire
below
escape
that,
inspections are
don't even look at
required,
it.
even though there are tens of thousands of them, and many, as we've discovered, more than 100 years old and in really bad shape. They're saying they're ready to fall.
Right, if you step on them, they're gonna ready to fall.
We went with the head of the National Fire Escape Association to one block in Hell's Kitchen. So these kinds of fire escapes, thousands of them across the city of New York, are just simply not on the radar
Right.
of inspectors.
And this is the norm. I believe that if we were to walk down this street right now, 75% of these would fail.
Let's do it. One after the other, these fire escapes, according to our expert, failed. 5 out of the 5 we checked.
It's supposed to be connected to that bolt there. If it broke off, it's holding an entire staircase. That staircase you overloaded is gonna collapse.
Missing bolts and rust corrosion weakening every fire escape that we looked at.
When you get to 3/4 to 1 inch of rust pack,
Dangerous.
internally on a tread, that's another person who's gonna fall through.
We wanted to see if the city knew how widespread the problem is. So we checked the 311 database and found in just the last 12 months, New Yorkers called to complain about fire escape problems nearly 1,700 times.
That's a lot.
A red flag?
Definitely. Anything, again, on the exterior of the building that could fall off could kill someone.
The buildings department says it has no plans to do random inspections. A spokesman tells us owners of buildings 6 stories or less are responsible for safely maintaining their buildings. We should note here too that outside of the city, state law requires that all fire escapes, no matter the height of the building, get inspected every 5 years.
So, you mentioned that you've seen me for the past 10 years. You may recall this happened after the station night fire.
The smoke, the flames, and the frightened faces, all in a firefighter's line of duty. But Chief William Hitchcock remembers the night it wasn't the fire that almost stopped him,
Oh, I was scared to death.
but the fire escape that broke underneath him.
With a ram that just came away from the building.
And our investigation found across Massachusetts more unsafe fire escapes, rusty, deteriorating, crumbling, broken. And what state officials didn't know, the system they set up to keep fire escapes safe is also falling apart.
The potential ramifications are
We know.
disastrous.
So let's look at this one. This expert ironworker is licensed to build, maintain, and inspect fire escapes.
So then over here,
For months, we examined dozens of them with alarming results.
looking at this today, would this pass inspection?
No.
In dormitories, at theaters, at homes, and apartment buildings.
Rust is actually eating away the metal of the fire escape.
Right.
And the bottom line,
It'll get weak and then eventually it'll fall.
This one has rotted connections. This one missing bolts, twisted metal.
would the stairs come down?
No, never come down.
This one a broken tread.
So how dangerous is it for the people inside this building?
This fire escape is definitely gonna put somebody either in the hospital or it's gonna put somebody in a cemetery.
Fire escapes are so critical. The state building code requires they be certified for structural adequacy and safety every 5 years. But our investigation found that safeguard is simply being ignored. Here's proof. We chose fire escapes at random in Boston, Somerville, Cambridge, Worcester, and here in Quincy. We checked building department files
But there's no fire escape certification.
to see if building owners had submitted their mandatory inspection reports.
There's no certification in this one either.
Bottom line, not one we checked in Quincy had been certified as safe. And the Director of Inspectional Services admitted because of staffing shortages, the city has no idea how many other fire escape owners are breaking the rules.
And as a result, do you know how many fire escapes in your city are safe or not?
Well, I don't know.
In Worcester, not one we checked was certified. In Somerville,
No.
4 more fire escapes,
Did it fall through the cracks? Yeah.
not one up-to-date certification. And again, no system for keeping track.
How can they get away with that?
I guess that the shortest answer of all is because we don't have the resources to sit here and follow up on these things.
If structural deficiencies are reported, local building inspectors can actually evacuate residents until repairs are made.
Would you talk to us on camera about this?
No, but when we surveyed 24 more communities, most admitted they had no idea how many fire escapes were certified. In Taunton, inspectors told us they haven't seen a certification in 25 years. Northampton officials said, it's a cold day in hell when that happens.
See, that's how West Mass, that's what we
The
said.
official in charge would not come out to discuss it. In Boston, fire escapes. Again, according to inspectional services, not one we checked was certified. Officials know they are required to enforce the building code, but they admit they don't always know if owners are breaking the law.
The building code is being ignored.
Right, but it's difficult to write a violation when you don't have knowledge of something like that.
But state officials say for a critical issue like this, communities should know. And they warn, the Massachusetts building code is not optional.
Does it worry you that these fire escapes are not being certified?
This is an important issue and should not be ignored.
That's because after the smoke and flames begin, it'll be too late to learn you've got no way out.
I can't stress it enough, Hank, that these things have to be maintained and someone's got to be watching.
As a result of our investigation, state officials will now issue an alert to local inspectors. Meanwhile, if there's a fire escape on your home or office, you can contact your local building department to make sure it's properly certified. In the newsroom, I'm Hank Fellaby Ryan.
I did that in 2003, guys.
You wanna make the alert, you want?
Go ahead.
Hey, alert, we gotta pay attention to this one.
Thanks, that was really strong. Put it right out there.
What it is, looks like some questions are popping up, and I got another quick video, but then we'll take a break. But what's the questions?
So I just wanted to make a little bit of a statement, because I agree with what the guys was saying up there, and with the staffing levels. Because if you look at the fire department and the police department and the building department, we're all working on the same number of buildings, the same number of people, in the same communities. Now, I don't know about in Leominster, but in Fitchburg, I know we have a hell of a lot more firefighters and police officers than we do building inspectors. So we do a lot, and Dave will tell us, Dave's our state rep, we do a lot of inspections in Fitchburg. And with the 4 inspectors that we now have, because we didn't always have 4, we could not possibly keep up with the inspections, not even close. No way. We'd be doing 15 or 20 inspections each a day, not counting, that's just 110 inspections and 304 inspections.
Right. Well, case in point, this is an owner-required thing.
I understand that.
Third party, right? Third party.
But a lot of
Yeah,
people
so an
are
owner
trying
has
to blame it on the
contract with
building
somebody
department.
to get it done, and then get this, get this administratively, they don't have enough people to even, deal with the
So
paperwork.
how can we get the fire department, which has extra staff, he actually works, he's just joined the National Fire Escape Association. He's a firefighter, what's it?
Metro Boston area.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta speak up about that. They don't have as many people as being touted here either. I know you're short-staffed, no matter.
No,
We need more.
what we want to say here is that there's several ways, you just got to make it a system. So we're not asking you to go out and look at it for these fire escapes. We're basically saying that, through the firemen, or you
Yeah, sure.
fellow firefighter.
So my name's Arthur, firefighter in the Metro Boston community. So what we do on my department, fire department does inspections, right? We go out and inspect commercial buildings, high rises, condos. But we're also trusted by the public to go into their homes, go into apartment buildings. So we see what's going on. That's what we do, is we look around, we look for violations, we look for, make sure sprinkler systems are tagged, fire extinguishers. So what we can do is incorporate that into looking at existing fire escapes on the outside of buildings. One thing we do when we do inspections, we do a 360 on the outside, right? So we should be seeing fire escapes. What we can do is bring that to our fire prevention officer, or whoever's in charge of that, and communicate that through the building department.
Perfect, that's the answer.
And actually, in your law, 14828A, it requires you to do that. You find a building issue, you make sure you contact the building official and send that to them.
So a couple of quick things to work together. Fire departments can sometimes get into residential, which you guys are not allowed to play the residential 1 or 1-2, right? But fire departments are in. But they can put it on their checklist to ask for, not order, a fire escape affidavit. I need a copy of your fire escape affidavit. Not seeing one, it creates a violation on their end that who satisfies? They do. So it's an open ticket on their end. Ask for a certificate. The guy had everything, smoke detector certificate, everything else that you normally need. Yes.
So, if a building permit is issued for a certain building, can we also tie that, hey, listen, we'll grant you the permit if we see this?
Yeah.
Hold them hostage.
Well, that's a great way of saying it.
Well,
We do that in reverse, but I just gave you a code. I gave you some codes, but that's another. So again, when you do your 360, or pre-plans, they call them a lot of times, you guys can say, hey, I need a copy of your affidavit. Not having one, it's an open ticket on the fire department side, but it's a trigger back to the building. The building says, hey, I need a copy of your affidavit. So that's as far as you guys go. You're saying, I'm looking for one, for it to be a completely signed off building, smoke detector sign off, da-da-da-da-da, and second means of egress verification. You're not ordering one. You're asking for one. Goes back to these guys here. If I may just, when you're dealing with the code now, whether you're having permit activity going on in a building, if you add a checklist to all, that's what Boston did. They actually tied it in at the end, and that they couldn't close a permit unless they had a fire escape affidavit at the end. So they put fire escapes to the back. This is as a result of Hank Phillippe Ryan 15 years ago, right? But again, it's still But imagine, like you said, it's not the holding of a hostage, it's basically saying, we're gonna issue a permit.
It's a condition.
It's a condition. I need to bring me a check, I need a plan signed by a structural engineer, blah, 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 and do you have 2 means of egress certified? And here's the best part, you're not gonna hold anybody up, because if they have a garbage fire escape made of wood or steel, what's the alternative under the OSHA plan?
Equivalent.
Yeah.
Equivalent, scaffolding. And is it satisfactory to you, to the building department? Equivalent scaffolding?
Should be,
So
yeah.
not for us.
No, temporarily.
Exactly.
Why is it
So
not?
Fitchburg Fire Prevention doesn't allow scaffolding.
Because you can't, you're mixing different things there. If you're talking OSHA, that's to comply with OSHA regulations
Right.
for workers,
Correct.
not for public use or private use, if you will, other than that.
So what would be your end? How could you help us
That's
with
to be a
that?
building code compliant
Right.
means of egress or fire escape if it's falling into the fire escape.
So what would be is there such a thing as a temporary scaffolding that is 3 feet wide, 7-11 rails on all sides, meeting?
It actually meets it's like you're talking, it's
For
nuts and
repairs?
bolts, it's physical dimensions, it's characteristics, it's
Well, like you
open
said,
or
for
not.
workers, yes,
whatever.
but for tenants, no.
Well, I've seen, and this is where you may wanna kick this around a few more times, I've seen buildings where the fire escape is either under construction or getting removed, and they've created a full set of stairs that are code compliant stairs, 7-Eleven rises around rails, platforms, egress onto them, you know, because they have to satisfy, it says very clearly, 2 people have to agree on this, otherwise, the first thing you fix is the fire escape. This is just, I'm not saying that you wanna push the fire escape ever to the back, I think it should be the first thing you fix before you let anybody get into the building and do whatever needs to be done. But in some cases, there's horse trading going on, it's like, you know what? Scaffold the whole building, or whatever that side may be. Now you can mothball the fire escapes to their satisfaction so that nobody unintentionally gets on it for any reason, and nobody inside the building gets on the fire escape while it's under repair or replacement, because it could be a new galvanized one coming in 6 to 9 months. But in the meantime, we need to keep knocking this building through, you know, the guts on the inside. So I'm not a code.
Occupied building, a building official might be able to accept that as a compliance alternative because it may maintain occupancy.
More case by case basis, 75% of the time. Yes, question.
We're also required to get a NFPA 241 life safety plan for bigger projects. So it could be part of the 241 plan, it shows how they're gonna have a temporary egress, how it's gonna be constructed.
That's part of what we do, if they're gonna reduce the means, we invite the fire department in, we go in all the units, we check all the smoke, we check the fire department, we check everything to make sure that all the prevention is up to date 100% before they get started, and if they're gonna even think about it.
So it just becomes a checklist. You guys add it to your checklist when you do your 360, say you're looking for a copy of the affidavit, having done, you create a ticket, but you notify the building department creates a ticket that normally needs to be satisfied in 30 days. But if there's permit process going on, you guys start horse trading because it's one of your conditions for the permit, that's all it is. As soon as you put it out as a checklist, guess what happens? This will not fix itself in 3 to 5 days. This will not fix itself in 3 to 5 months. But in the next 3 to 5 years, it'll go full cycle and you guys will have fully certified fire escape systems. And that's the metal ones. You haven't even touched the wood ones on the back of your structures yet, because a lot of those are not even pressure treated, they're all painted, they're all rotten, there's carpenter ants. You got all kinds of things back there, but you know, as they say, you know how you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, and you start on the metal. Because the metal is easy and it triggers. Because your code is actually very well written so that it talks about even all exterior steel or wooden stairways. That's front stairs, back stairs, side stairs, includes cement. A lot of people don't even realize that all exterior steel or wooden, they don't even mention cement, but it's like, or stone, it's thrown in there because if there's a trip hazard, it has to be noted. So it's like anything else. It's means of egress, and so if it gets you in and out of your building, and you can trip or get hurt on, or firemen can trip or get hurt on, it needs to be certified under that. So this iceberg is actually upside down. You guys think the iceberg is just the fire escapes to this tip. There's this whole bottom piece to it that is just. But can we just focus here on the top? Can we just focus on Rocky for a little bit?
Speaking of elephant, I think the food is here.
And that's the bell call. Question, yes, one last question.
Well, another comment. 2 years ago in Fitchburg, we had a mill conversion and with the scaffolding. And by the time fire prevention and I realized they had torn the stairs out of the inside of the building, otherwise we would have never let them do it. So they
Yeah.
put scaffolding up, and we had a worker injured, and we couldn't, number one, the firefighters had a hard time getting up it, and number two, they couldn't get the guy out of the building. He was in the middle of the building, we couldn't get him out.
Yeah.
So we've changed, or fire, I should say fire prevention, has changed everything that they do as far as scaffolding on buildings like that that are being reconditioned.
And then let's go eat, but here's the main thing about the OSHA. You're not gonna enforce OSHA. The contractor is very scared of OSHA coming down and creating havoc at his building site. You're saying you're supposed to maintain 2 means of egress as part of your 1910.37 requirement, Mr. Contractor. I'm just handling building and fire, but that's just additional pressure that you can bring on to say, you're not even meeting OSHA, which I'm not here to enforce, but dude, you know, so that's why we put all, NFPA, we put OSHA, we put fire, and we put IBC all on the same page so that you guys can all work together, and the objective is a safe environment for people to work, but then at the end, when it's all said and done, it's a safe environment for people to self-egress out, and firemen to get in and save and do whatever they have to do. Lunchtime, guys. Thank you. Half hour now.
Take yours?
Half hour lunch, guys.
John, you're on videotape.
I'm on video?